with you again, Errol.
Let me ask you about some of the breaking news we got this evening about a grand jury being impaneled to look into the Russia connections that have been alleged, possibly, between the Trump organization and the Trump campaign. What do you know?
Well, I don't think anyone knows anything, but I don't think it's not an unusual step. Anytime there's a major investigation, the prosecutors impanel a grand jury. In fact, I'm not sure if Mueller needed a grand jury in order to issue subpoenas. As local district attorneys when I was the DA, everybody thought you got a subpoena from the district attorney, but it's really a subpoena that's issued by a grand jury. So in order to issue subpoenas, you have to open up a grand jury in order to get people to compel people to come to testify, in order to get documents, whatever the special counsel Mueller is looking for, he would need subpoena power in order to do that. So I think it was just probably, Errol, a matter of time, not whether it was going to happen or not.
Right. So it sounds from what you're saying that that's more sort of procedural. Just to even ask for documents from the campaign, you have to issue a subpoena, but it's not the special prosecutor. It comes from the grand jury.
It comes from the grand jury. Whether it's tape recordings, whether it's documents, whether it's compelling people to come to testify. You need to be able to have that power in order to compel people to do that.
Okay, so as a former prosecutor, you understand this, but put on your politician's hat for just a minute. As a representative, is it starting to distract or take up time or energy or focus from the work of Congress, the fact that this investigation is going on?
I think it's distracting the public. A lot of things are happening in Congress that don't get reported because of all of these other matters that are going on. Since January, when this Congress began, the House passed 279 bills. Now, 256 of them are stuck in the Senate with no action.
These are real bills.
Real
this
bills.
Isn't like naming post offices.
Well, some of them probably have some post office naming, but we passed a bill allowing small businesses to join insurance pool to make insurance cheaper for workers. So we've done some matters. Of course, you know, and the president did sign this. We passed the sanctions against Russia, North Korea, and Iran. So there's work being done, but that work gets overshadowed by the distractions, some of which you've just described.
Right. Where do things stand with the attempt to repeal and/or replace Obamacare? Is the Affordable Care Act, as far as you're concerned, is this question still on the table? Do you expect to come back to it, or has Congress largely moved on?
You know, that's a great question, Errol, because we do have a health care policy in this country, a system that is broken and needs some repairing. I recently did an op-ed piece on how to kickstart health care reform. And I think instead of trying to pass a big piece of legislation that was to repeal another large piece of legislation, and by which the Affordable Care Act was passed without a Republican vote, the replacement plan was passed without a Democratic vote. If we keep doing this on partisan lines every 4 years or every time there's a change of administrations, we're going to have a different health care policy for this country. It's not fair to patients, families, or doctors. So my proposal is to break the thing up. There's things that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. If, in fact, giving people the ability to buy insurance across state lines will cause competition, which would drive premiums down, let's do that. If we're going to get rid of the individual mandate and not compel people to buy insurance, maybe now insurance companies have to compete for your business, and maybe that will drive prices down. So I think these things that we could all agree on, if we pass them, show the American public we're moving forward, show them that health care is getting cheaper for them and they're having greater access for it. I think we still have to get to those difficult things. We have to reform Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, because if we don't, it won't exist in 30 years.
When you say the system is broken, what about it is harming people in your district? Because I understand in Tennessee or some other place, in some rural counties, they may be seeing big increases. They may be seeing the insurers flee the market, but that's not the case here in New York.
No, but in New York I met a family that pays $20,000 a year in premiums, have a $6,000 deductible. I don't know what their copays are. They don't go to the doctor any longer. We have a lot of people in our community who took the penalty that was imposed on them for not having health care insurance because it was cheaper than buying the insurance. I don't think that's the purpose of our health care policy. What the replacement plan was going to do for seniors, right now insurance companies can charge seniors 3 times as much as they charge a young, healthy person. That was going to increase to 5 times as much at a time when most people in their later years needed health care more than they did in their early years, and probably are living on a limited income and can't afford anymore.
Right. So in the course of the talk about repeal and replacement, there was specific attention paid to something I know is a big deal in your district, which is addiction treatment, and whether or not it would continue to be covered, right? Because it was the Medicaid expansion that paid for a lot of that stuff. Is that still on the chopping block?
That's something, Errol, that has everyone's attention. You know, when I was the district attorney of Staten Island, they deemed Staten Island to be the epicenter of the crisis that we're going through now. That hasn't changed, but the expansion of this crisis is now throughout the rest of our country, so everyone's experiencing it. You know, it's a threefold approach. We have to still have law enforcement to punish the people selling these poisons to our children. We have to educate people who haven't been involved in it yet, how dangerous it is. And we also have to help those people who need treatment. As you know, I'm a product of an alcoholic father. Mm-hmm. My father found the rooms of AA when I was 8 years old. And you know, you go for treatment and recovery for yourself, but I'm a collateral beneficiary of my father's sobriety. I suspect I wouldn't be a congressman right now if he didn't become sober. So I understand addictions. I understand relapse is a part of recovery, but we have to help those people who are in a crisis situation themselves, because it just doesn't only affect them, it affects their families as well.
Okay, we will continue watching that. And of course, the political news that we first reported, which is that Michael Grimm is thinking about challenging you to try and get the congressional seat that he once held. Any concerns, any conversations going on? What do you
I've read the reports, Errol, but my concentration is on working for the people in Congress. I mean, we still have a lot of things to do. We have to get to taxes, we have to get to infrastructure, so we still have to deal with health care and all those other things that we were talking about. There's a long time between now and the political season next year, and so I'm being concentrated on what we're doing and not paying attention. I also have 5 Democratic opponents so far, and so, you know, that will all play out itself, Errol, but we're home now for a little bit of time. The month of August, we're on recess. People think that's on vacation, but the work here is just as hard and demanding as it is down in Washington. We're doing a lot of events. We're seeing a lot of constituents. And so I'm concentrating on that and concentrating on the political. We only serve for a 2-year cycle, right. So if we concentrate on the political stuff the entire 2-year cycle, we'll never get anything done.
It's a relatively small community in Staten Island. Do you come across Michael Grimm? Have you spoken with him?
I've seen Michael since he came home. In fact, you know, there was a time when someone reported that his home was being seized by the federal government, and Michael's mom and sister rely on living with him as well, or they had. I'm not sure if they do any longer, but you know, I had called Guy Molinaro, I saw that in the paper, and I found someone that would let Michael and his family stay in a home, and I relayed that to them then. So you know, I haven't seen him much, but I know he's around, and you know, we'll let all that other stuff play out.
Okay. I mean, he hasn't conveyed to you any interest in running for any offices?
I've seen where he hasn't made any decision yet. So, you know, it's a process that everybody has to go through. I went through it as well before I decided to do it.
What do you think the issues will be going into next year? Will it be a referendum on how Dan Donovan has done, or will it be
I think that's every time that anybody, I mean, I've run 6 times so far, 3 times for DA, twice as a member of Congress, and once we won't talk about the time I had this crazy idea to run for Attorney General of the state of New York. Because I'm a congressman now, we know that one didn't turn out too well. But so it's always, when you're talking about someone who's already in office, it's always a referendum on their record. I'm very proud of the record that we have so far in Congress. I've only been there a little over 2 years. We've got some great work done, and I've been given a mantle. I'm on a very important committee to our community, the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm the chairman of a committee that deals with emergency response and preparedness. We deal both with terrorism and natural disasters. So for a community that experienced the tragedy in Lower Manhattan nearly 16 years ago, and for a community who suffered through Superstorm Sandy, I'm in a very important position for the people that I